This is Karma calling, and you better wake the up.
Welcome back to the podcast, Karma is Calling. I'm your host, Lauren, and today we're diving into all things human design. So human design is just like another modality like astrology that shares about your own unique energy here on Earth, your own body, and how to really interact with the universe. And why I thought it was such an important episode to have is because I'm going to be walking you guys through on my YouTube channel, Karma is Calling, my husband learning his design along with myself and how we're using it to manifest our dream life, how we're using it to learn our superpowers, how we're learning it to live life within alignment and getting out of this rut that we feel like we have been in. Now, some background. My host today is Regina, and I'll introduce her at the end. But Regina is a human design expert who gave me a reading like a year and a half ago, I would say, maybe a year ago. And she really described to me how to follow my own instincts. Now, at that time, I wasn't ready to fully practice. I put that on the back burner and I kept going with my life. And lo and behold, I ended up getting really sick. I was going to the doctors, I was paying for the blood work, I was paying for the CT scans, and they weren't finding anything. And at that point, I knew it was an energy block, it was an energy issue. And so I was trying to navigate it on my own, but I ended up reaching out to a therapist who studies human design and really helped me break down my chart piece by piece. And having this person come into my sphere really motivated me to be able to do that for my clients, which is exactly how I found astrology. Literally, my therapist brought it to me. Now I find a therapist 5 years later who brings this to me. It's blowing my mind how the universe works. But I feel like how the difference between how I see human design and astrology is astrology gives us our soul's purpose, right? It gives us our roadmap, our personality, our shadows, what we need to heal. And human design gives you the direction to use all of that energy. So I think that they marry really well together. And how I use it in my own practice is supporting people really identifying their unconscious energy and how to capitalize on their strengths. So we're going to go on to a lot about human design overall, but basically, I just want you to have your birth time ready, your location, and your birth date, and access to Google, because you're going to want to look up your strategy, your authority, your type. These are little things that we're going to cover today. Now, obviously, book a reading if you need further guidance. It will literally change your life, but you can have a lot of free resources online around human design. There's a lot of free apps, so you don't totally need a reading. And so in the middle of the episode, we are going to dive into more of the personal information for you. So make sure to stick around. And the person that's going to be explaining all of this information to you is Regina. And Regina is a mystic and birth worker that specializes in astrology, human design, physiological birth, and postpartum. She's the founder of Celestial Womb, a container created to help women reconnect with their inner source and realignment. Before founding the Celestial Room, she spent a decade in the corporate legal business world, focusing on legal technology, solutions, research, business sales. And when she was most disconnected from her true energy, Regina discovered human design and rediscovered astrology. These energetic modalities changed her life for the better, as it was the catalyst to fully realigning with her most authentic self. And of course, she's going to go into that story of how she is exactly where she is today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Regina. Hello, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. I love just hanging out with you and being in your energy, so I'm excited.
Thank you. Today we're talking about human design, and that is something that you given me a chart reading on. And so you have so much knowledge to share. But first, I just want to give you a spot to give a little bit of background on who you are and what you study. And so people kind of know, your energy.
Yeah. Well, I'm Regina, and I am like a metaphysics nerd. I don't know how else to describe me, but I'm obsessed with like the world of energy, metaphysics, spirituality, and that's where I spend the majority of my time. I'm a birth keeper, so where this all started really was becoming a doula back in like 2016, and it was like a new part of myself that I just felt like I was remembering. So like the whole world of like birth and fertility and labor and postpartum, it happened upon me, like I stumbled upon it, and then I just became really obsessed. And you look at my chart in astrology, and I have like the South Node in Libra in the fourth house conjunct Pluto, and the way that I practice, birth keeping and talk about birth is very much in line with that. So I do feel like it's something that I've come back to, that I've done for many lifetimes. And that's how it started. But now I actually focus a lot of my practice on astrology, on human design, on energetics, on just being in alignment with your own energy. And we'll talk so much about that today, right? So but birth is like the foundation of it all, because I like to like marry it into my practice. I work with a lot of families. I work with a lot of mothers. I work with a lot of birthing people. So it's kind of nice to marry it all together.
Yeah. How did it come upon you in 2016, like working as a doula?
Oh my gosh. I was walking around in my neighborhood at the time. I lived in Brooklyn, and I went to a yoga class that was like really down the street from my house in this old Victorian mansion that I just felt such a connection to, because the whole neighborhood is Victorian and like full of all of these old brownstones. But there's this one standalone mansion that they would do free events in. And one of the nights they were doing yoga, and I went with a friend, and there were posters everywhere for doula training, for like community action oriented doula training too. It was really awesome. So I was like, I should try this. I don't even know what a doula is. And then I went to like the orientation session, and I was blown away. I was blown away. Like, I can't even describe to you the way that my heart like burst open. Like, so it's just something that kind of like fell into like my universe, which is very generator, which I'll talk about. But it just kind of fell upon me, and then I became absolutely obsessed, which seems to be a trend with a lot of the things that I've stumbled on. But yeah, and then next thing I knew, my cousin got pregnant, and I was like, I can help you. And she's like, I don't want your help, but I was like, but I know all this stuff. So that started me down a road, and like a year and a half later, I became a mother myself. So it came at the right time. And it was, before all of that, I didn't even have like an inkling of, I was like, oh, I'll become a mother one day. It was like a casual thing, but it wasn't this thing that I've always had. That was like more like my sister. My sister's always wanted to be a mother since she was born. And that came later for me. It just came like this light bulb that turned on, and it couldn't turn off, and it was so bright and I couldn't unsee it. But yeah, that's how everything in my life works, I guess. I'm one way as a second, and then the next thing I know, like something comes into my consciousness and I can't unsee it. So that's kind of how it was for me with the birth aspect of things.
I love that. And I feel like you're just following your pings, right? Like you went into the
Yes.
yoga, you had a ping, you went after it. And I relate so hard. And maybe that's just because we're both have that sacral. But my husband will be like, how do you know what to do? Like, how do you find your passions? You just always find something. And I'm like, I just follow. Like I literally follow the passions. And it sounds like that's what you do.
Yes, exactly. And I did that, way before the deconditioning. So if you feel like you don't know anything about human design, or that you're so out of alignment, there is a part of you that understands your core you. So don't be alarmed. Yes, there's a lot of work to actually fully decondition, and we'll talk about what all that means. But just know that you're still you, and you're just, you're a different energetic octave of you. And like, I think the work that we do, Lauren, it's about like getting to like the highest octave, or the most expanded octave of energy that a person can get to.
I didn't even name, Regina and I met in an astrology apprenticeship program where we both were studying astrology, and now we practice astrology together, and we're going to be teachers together, which is so exciting. I love it.
It's so exciting.
Okay, so tell me and everyone else how you got into human design specifically, because you became a doula, then you became human design, and then you got into astrology, right?
Yeah, it did kind of go in that order. Well, sort of. Astrology has like always been a part of like who I was, but it was just so superficial. Like I had it at such a superficial level. I started reading astrology books when I was 11, and we started this like habit with my best friend, who's still my best friend now, from when I was 11. We found these like Linda Goodman books, and they were the ones that were really popular in the 70s, and like her mom had a bunch. So we were reading The Love Signs by Linda Goodman, The Sun Signs by Linda Goodman. I found out that I was an Aries moon, at 11. And I was like, what do I do with that? I'm a calm Taurus. I don't know how to like integrate those two energies. But it helped me understand this other fiery part of myself that I was always trying to like dampen with like moist earth from my like Taurus behavior. And I was like, why am I like that? It explains so much, but it really stayed like that. It stayed at sun and moon for so long. And, then I started getting more into like the birth chart, but you're right. In between that, like human design slipped in, and I discovered human design, discovered whatever that means, right? It came into my consciousness, human design randomly, like right after I had my second baby. So it was 2019. I had just moved to Maine. I felt super isolated. Postpartum has always been really hard on my body. And that's probably why I'm so passionate about postpartum work now. And I felt very alone. I felt very confused. I felt very just out of alignment and completely burnt out because one, I wasn't sleeping, and two, I have this like anxiety every single time I've had babies, that I have to go back to work. Like I'm like, okay, don't enjoy this like free flowing schedule of yours. You have to go back to work. And so I had this like kind of postpartum anxiety going on too. And then I did actually go back to work, and I was just not in my body. Everything was on autopilot. And then human design started becoming louder and louder within my sphere of consciousness. And I'm like listening to people talk about it, and they're using like, all the terms of human design. And like, what the hell is that? Like, what's a generator? What's my strategy and authority? Like, what's emotional authority? Like, what are all these words? What's a 2-4 like profile, things like that. And I just had to learn. Like, I was just like, okay, I'm going to keep watching these videos. At the time, I think, what's her name? Jasmine, I think, was the first person that I looked into. And then I looked at a bunch of Vanessa Henry's work, and she has a ton of an amazing human design resources, and she's been in the game for a really long time. And so I started buying books and really getting into human design and trying to understand like holistic self-knowledge about my body. Because again, my body was really like, it was my energy, of course, and human design is energy, but I found that human design really helps me understand what was going on with the misalignments of my body, because I truly was not awake. Like I was going through the motions of the day. I was going through the motions of taking care of my kids. I was going through the motions of going on Zoom calls, because at this point, COVID had hit and we're all isolated. And so I'm back at work, but I'm home. And though I was going to quit my job, I'm like, well, I get to be home, work from home completely. So I shouldn't quit yet. But really, it was like sucking my soul away in a lot of ways, because I just couldn't be present. And this was a way of kind of re-presencing myself, and re-understanding who I am. Because I lost myself through motherhood. I lost myself through this corporate job that I'd been in for over a decade. I lost myself through the move. I lost myself through just, social conditioning throughout my entire life of trying to fit within a mold when I'm not a person who's supposed to be fitting within a certain mold. So human design was like a lifesaver, and then more so at the time, because I didn't quite get into all of the different intricacies of astrology yet. I knew my rising sign and my sun and my moon, but I didn't really get into like all the meaning of everything for my chart. For me, it was human design first that I got into a deep dive with. I think I told you the story before, but like I would do these walks in the woods with my kids, and sometimes I would just go off on my own and do walks with the trails behind my house. And I was just like walking and then running and then walking, and then at some point I heard a voice say, like, why don't you just read charts? And so I was like, oh, what? And at the time I was doing both astrology and human design. So I was like, what do you mean read charts? And then I just started doing it. I just started following that. And it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. You just got a download in your head and
Yeah.
followed it.
Yeah. And it was a really
Wow.
clear download. And like usually when I get downloads, like I feel it in my body more so, but this was definitely a voice. And yeah, I will never forget that, because I was like, whoa, that was loud and clear. Like, what? I literally stopped in my tracks. I'm like, what? So
Divine
it
guidance.
was really
Oh,
cool.
that is so cool to look back on and know that exact moment in time when everything was
Yeah.
switched. So basically, burnout led you to really being like, I need something different. Can you speak to burnout? Because I feel like a lot of people, especially the clients I see as I'm a therapist, are experiencing it. And the programming of society is really scary to make changes, I feel like. And so human design can help, but I just want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, burnout is, I mean, I feel like so many people right now, as a result of our society, I mean, we can talk about how society is like moving and we're changing paradigms and everything is like screwed up. So everyone's burnt out. um, but yeah, like burnout is a really, really, really huge issue. And I think part of it is just, being misaligned, like not following your natural energy and also overexerting yourself. Like, say you're not, I mean, there's two ways of thinking in human design. Some people don't think that non-energetic, like non-energy types can be burnt out in the same way, and they're right to an extent. But the common term for that feeling is burnout. So I'm going to use it for all energy types. Usually it's, associated with like sacral, right? So sacral burnout. So a lot of generators and manifesting generators can actually feel that burnout. But if you're a projector or a reflector or a manifester, there is like, they need more rest. There's more periods of rest that they need. And so a lot of times they can act like super generators, and like their burnout is like borderline, like they could have health issues, like legitimate health issues, because they're trying to run all the time when they're not actually made to run all the time in the same way that a generator can. So as a generator or manifesting generator, burnout is essentially like when you're completely out of alignment, or when you're like, it's mainly out of alignment. Like, I don't actually think there's any or there, because you're pushing up against your own energy. You're making things a lot harder for yourself. You're working outside of like what your natural energy wants to do. And then that creates a disharmony within your system and within your energy. Therefore, you get burnt out. And again, that goes for everyone, but in particular, generators and manifesting generators, because we have the actual energy to get things done and to keep going. And we want to do like things and work and all of that. But we have to make sure that I don't want to say have to anything, because obviously we are all autonomous beings, but we could make an effort to really follow our natural energy and our natural flow to avoid that kind of disharmony and that burnout and that feeling of, feeling disembodied in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And I have experienced that so many times slash now, because I'm a manifesting generator and I will force myself to do things, even though I know, and fears like safety, there's money there, just keep doing it. And my body's
Yes.
saying no, no, no. And human design has welcomed me to that. So before we get too far ahead, let's talk about human design, what it is, and then you can break down where you want to start with that so people listening can
Yeah.
know what we're talking about.
Awesome. I would say human design is like a holistic system for self-knowledge. Like all of these other energetic systems, they use the term body graph to describe the chart itself, but it's using your birth date and your birth time, just like astrology. So you do need to know that information, though actually Genetic Matrix has just updated their software to be able to give you a range and see like what what happened during a time frame, so you can see kind of what your body graph is closest to. So they've created that update, but ideally you want your birth time, your exact birth time, your birth date, birth location. But the system itself is based on the Kabbalah, the I Ching, biometrics, some science, the gene keys, and it's kind of astrology, tropical astrology in particular, and it kind of mixes those modalities and creates a system based on your auric field in particular, that you can use to decondition, which means, shedding away the societal mainstream viewpoints or ways to go, and also any viewpoints that your family has like imposed on you that you've ingested, help you decondition from all of that to actually get to your cleanest and purest expression of your own energy. And in doing so, the theory behind that, the experiment behind that, is that your aura will be able to pull things in for you, in a way that is seamless and that is creates more flow in your life, and that once you're in alignment, things kind of fall into place a little bit more for you, so you're not, going against the grain in your life. So that's, I guess, the synopsis of what human design is.
I'm going to show the body graph right now. So if you are watching this on YouTube, if you're not, you can head to YouTube. The channel's Karma is Calling, and see what a body graph actually looks like. So this is the body graph that she is speaking to. These are our chakras, right? The energy
Hmm.
centers.
Yep,
And
exactly.
one thing, if you're wondering, like, where was I conditioned or how to get some insight, if you look up your body graph and there's no color in those centers, those are the centers that you really want to focus on, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's spot on. And I will say that, I've come across people who have been conditioned in their defined areas, which are the colored in energy centers. And it's a lot harder to decondition from that. It takes a lot of work and you have to really dig into that. It's so much harder to be conditioned in your defined centers. But once you are, then there's a lot of work to decondition. And the founder of human design, Ra Uru Hu, he said that it takes on average 7 years to decondition. So I'm actually still in the deconditioning process. There's a lot of experimentation with human design, and it's designed to actually go out and like use the system, experiment with it, play around with it, make it work for you. But yeah, the deconditioning sort of process on average takes about 7 years, which I thought was really wild.
That is wild. So if the chakras are kind of our energy centers, and then the lines are how our energy is flowing within us, correct? Is when I look
Yes,
at this.
yes, absolutely. So those lines are gates, and if they connect to another energy center, then it forms a channel. And so you can tell a lot of information from that channel. The channel creates like almost a complete flow between the energies. Sometimes when you have a gate, and they call them hanging gates, but if you have a gate, like say your gate 49 in your chart, you just have that gate, you don't have the full channel. And what makes it great is that if you meet somebody with a 19, for instance, they really kind of complete that energetic flow.
Mm.
So we're always like in transit with other people, and people are influencing our abilities to be able to communicate a little bit more. Like for me, I have like almost all of my centers open, which is kind of nuts. So I have a lot of deconditioning to do. And you complete my throat because I definitely have the 1 and you have the 8. And so you actually make my throat defined, which is really nice because we're on a podcast.
I
So
love that. Oh
it's
my
really
God.
awesome.
That is so cool. I haven't noticed pulling up this for my clients. So many of them have 11. And so they complete this gate for me. It's a wild, like
Yeah.
client after client after client. I'm like, whoa, that is so weird.
That is so awesome. That's amazing. You're like calling that energy in almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and my husband has it. So we're getting in the weeds of like technical, but if you guys pull it up on yourself, I wanted you to know what you're looking at. And then Regina's going to go over just the basics. If you don't need to know how to read that at all, you can get a reading from her. Soon I'll be giving readings. I can't wait. But tell me a little bit more about the basics of human design, what you feel like is the most important information for people who are just learning.
Okay, the lowest hanging fruit, the best thing to know is your energy type. So, are you a generator? Are you a manifesting generator? Are you a manifester? Are you a reflector? Are you a projector? Any one of those. It's really helpful to know your energy type because then you'll know how your aura works in this world, if that makes sense. So, you'll have that. And then the other thing, the best thing to know is your strategy and then your authority. And your strategy is just, where you're getting those like pings to make decisions. And in human design, unless you're really, there's no type that makes decisions from their mind. And there are things like, rare types like the mental projector, but they're not necessarily making decisions from their mind. What they're doing is it's like a feedback loop where they're feeling it in their body and getting it out of their body in a way, if that makes sense. They're self-projected projectors where they have to talk things out in order to like hear what they actually need to do. And then there's mental projectors that kind of need to be in an environment where they're talking things out. And that's still not necessarily from their mind. But those are the two exceptions that people are like, oh, maybe they're sort of making decisions from their mind, but no, not exactly. So nothing in human design it says make your decisions from your mind or your ego. So that's the strategy or the authority, I should say. That's the authority. The strategy is what do you do? Like a generator is going to wait to respond, and I'll get into what that means. A manifester is actually going to inform and initiate, and so they don't have to like wait on anything. They're going to just say what they're going to do, and then they're going to go straight for it. And then we have projectors that are waiting for an invitation. So that's the strategy. And then I talked a little bit about authority, which is like, where you're making decisions, what energy center in particular is kind of fired up and where you're making decisions. So if you're a generator, that's the sacral center, which is your gut. So that whole saying of like, go with your gut, is really only appropriate for generators and manifesting generators. So
when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, we need to stop saying that to everyone because that
to
is real.
everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. To be fair, generators and manifesting generators, we do make up like 70% plus of the population. However, still not fair. It's still not fair to the other, percentage of people out there that actually don't have that natural ping within their gut that tells them yay or nay. So I thought that was incredibly interesting. So waiting for the invitation with the projector, and all of the, like I said, all the terms of art of human design can be a little like, it's just like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean? What does that mean? So, a little amorphous in definition. So if you're a generator and you have to wait to respond, it's more so like responding to things in your environment, responding to what it can be literal. Like, I'm responding to a question someone asked me and I'm feeling a ping in my gut one way or the other. But it also can be environmental, like when you're out in the field and you notice something comes into your external space. You notice it, you notice the feeling that it brings you, and you feel like motivated to go one way or another. That's also waiting to respond. So you're waiting to respond to things that come up in your external reality, and that's how you're making decisions. And then you go to your authority as a generator or a manifesting generator, and you're in your gut, you're in your sacral authority, and you're waiting for that like feeling of excitement. Almost, that's what I like to describe it of. You're like, it's a hell yes for you. It's a yes. So if you're thinking about it, if you're like, I don't know, that's a no. It just straight up is a no. And you should just like listen to that and stop trying to convince yourself otherwise.
I just want to touch on that. So if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you make decisions from your gut and you're
Mhm.
always responding. And I think that when I first learned this, I was like, wait, do I need to wait for someone to literally tell me? And like you're saying, no. Like I had
No.
a therapist practice human design, which motivated me to go after human design because she came into my sphere, right? And so I just
Yes.
responded to an experience.
Exactly. That's such a great way of putting it. Gosh, what's the other thing I want to say? Okay, so as a generator or manifesting generator, you can also have emotional authority. So I don't want to leave that out.
Okay.
Emotional authority is pretty strong. It trumps any other authority. So if you're a sacral being, if you're an anything being, and you have your solar plexus colored in and defined, then more than likely you're going to have emotional authority. And that is one of the strongest motors that we have. So it does trump that sacral authority. So if you have emotional authority, it's a different playing field for you, and you're actually waiting for emotional clarity. So after you wait to respond and you respond to something, you do need to wait for emotional clarity, meaning like you're feeling pretty emotionally neutral. So if you're at a high emotionally, not a right time to make that decision. If you're at a low emotionally, not a right time to say yes to that decision. So it's just going to actually take time before you can respond to something. Even if it takes you 5 minutes, take a moment to kind of check in with yourself, feel into like how you're emotionally feeling before you make that decision. And I know our society is just not patient, and it's really tough to do that kind of thing. But I've met a lot of emotional authority people who naturally do that because they're like, I've learned through time, like I need a moment. So I think that's really cool.
It is. And then will you explain the difference between a manifesting generator and a generator?
Absolutely. And so there's a couple of nuances here. Manifesting generator is sort of a hybrid between a manifester and a generator. I would say most of the time they're going to have that sacral authority. They are going to go with their gut. They are going to be waiting to respond. There are some manifesting generators that are more manifester than generator, but the sacral is just so strong that it is going to be the authority 9 times out of 10. So a manifesting generator, their strategy is to inform, but like wait to respond first and then inform and like go for it. So manifesting generators, like it's good for them to do many things. Like a generator is here to master maybe one thing at a time. It's not all, especially depends on your profile, but a generator like masters something over time. You know, a manifesting generator, I guess I'll use the example of like, let's say my aunt, who's like my cousin because she's quite young, is a manifesting generator, and she's like a great expression of it because she has, at least in her career, she kind of shows how she's a manifesting generator. She has a job in this direction where she is, you know, working in HR, but then she also has a construction company, and then she also has, you know, her real estate license, and she does real estate as well. And she just has to do many things at once, and they do not have to be related at all. And it's actually quite healthy for a manifesting generator to express their energy in a lot of different outlets. It's unhealthy when they're trying to just fit into one thing and stick with one thing and stay with it. Starting and stopping, quitting, all of that stuff is very natural to the energy. And I would say manifesting generators, which my oldest daughter is one, she's very nonlinear. It's very nonlinear. It's like they're able to see the steps that you need to take, but you can see like where you can skip. Essentially, like a manifesting generator will go to from 1 to 5 because they can see the easy road to 5. And maybe they'll go back and like cover their steps if they need to, but really they know how to get to 5. They don't need to go to 2, 3, or 4. So very fast energy, definitely able to like multitask and do a ton of things at once. And nonlinear is like what I would define them as.
I would say, yeah. And as a manifesting generator, the best compliment I ever had from my husband, actually, and I didn't know I was MG at this point, was he's like, what is that saying where it's like, you're not a master of one, you're like a jack of all trades. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. He's like, you're so like, you're good at everything, but you're not great at everything. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a compliment, but then I realized it was. He's like, you pick up this, you pick up that, you just can learn something. And now that I know human design, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I will say like, I hate that people cut that quote off. And I like almost want to find the full quote because it's so awesome. And it makes, I feel like they cut it off because, capitalism, but
Oh, I didn't even know there was a full quote to that.
There's a full quote and it's beautiful. So jack of all trades, master of none, but often better than a master of none, of one.
Oh, I love that.
Often better than a master of one. And that's what we need to remember. Yes, do many things. That's how you're supposed to do it. So don't let, we've all been like trained to be in these little boxes of like work at your corporate job for 20 years and do the same thing and just elevate from one point to the next point. That's like a linear trajectory. And honestly, most people don't work that way. And it's kind of silly to even say that. The whole jack of all trades, master of none thing got cut off, I feel like, with the advent of capitalism. So
thank you for saying that. I love that. The other thing I want to highlight about MGs that I'm curious for you, and this is an example of conditioning, I think. So we and manifestors, you can speak to this as well, if it goes both ways, but because we have to inform, we have to like share things. Sometimes I really don't like sharing things because
it's the hardest thing.
It's so hard. Why is it so hard?
It's the hardest thing for manifesting generators and manifestors. It's the one hardest thing because they, at some point, may have told somebody what they're going to do. And again, you have like, as having that manifestor part of you, you have those like those urges and creative insights. And a manifestor, a pure manifestor, is going to have these weird urges that like, it's never been done before. And so once like they've probably had a terrible, experience informing somebody and them saying, it's not a good idea. That sounds crazy. Like, no, that's never going to work. Or somebody like, poo-pooing their idea and it just like drains that excitement and that energy. And that's the thing is like, you have to remember it's informing. It is not asking for permission. It is not asking for other people's opinions. It is not asking for their feedback or their input in any sort of way. You're just like, hey, this is going to affect you in some way because you're in my field and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. And that's that. And I think that, once they realize you're not asking for permission, you're just informing and you're letting them know what you're doing. Because once you get going, they're not going to get whiplash because you've already told them what you're going to do. And that's the whole point of the informing aspect of things for manifestors and manifesting generators is that you move so quickly that it is like a huge storm for people. They're like, oh my God, what just happened? You're done with this? And there's two like ways that people respond to it. Like one, they can like they have to like collect their thoughts and try to get on board. And two, like they might just be upset with you, like the whole aspect, like, the manifesting generator and the manifester, you have an aspect of your aura that's closed and repelling, and the manifesting generator, their entire aura is closed and repelling. So you have the ability to bring people into your vortex, but also repel them as a result. So informing is so important because people actually do want to support you. And as much as it hurts because of bad experiences or people not being able to see the future in the way that you can, or the ideas the way that you can, they want to actually, the people that will support you will actually come and rally behind you and support you and like help you get that thing done a lot faster than by yourself, if that makes sense. But informing is so important, even though it's the hardest thing to do.
Oh, that was a great breakdown of generators, manifesting generators. If you don't know your type, just Google it. You can go online right now and Google it so you can follow along too, by the way. Okay, what is the next one you want to cover?
Oh, okay. So let's talk about projectors.
Okay.
So we'll talk about projectors. Projectors are about 20% of the population. They are what we call a non-energy energy type. And that just means you're not a generator. You're not a manifesting generator, meaning you don't have sacral energy. Sacral energy is the only energy center that runs consistently, that is giving you that consistent life force energy. So the sacral center is life force energy. And so all projectors have this undefined or completely open. So that does not give you a consistent access to life force energy. And so a lot of projectors have always tried to fit into a generator's energy because most of the population is a generator. Most of the population is required to work a 9 to 5. 9 to 5s do not work for projectors. They just don't. There's something, what's her name? The human design, one of the famous human design authors, her name escapes me. She has a lot of books. But one thing she says about the health of a projector is, watching your health and being like, cautious not to overextend yourself, because by 40, you might incur a lot of like almost permanent health issues as a result of trying to be like a generator for so long. They have the ability, any open center that you have in your body graph, you have the ability to amplify it quite a bit. So projectors have the ability to have more energy than a generator. It's just that, it's not sustainable. There's going to be a point at which you crash, and not having access to that like sort of gut feeling all the time, it may make you, it just make it harder for you to understand that you are being like overextended, that you're approaching burnout. And so a lot of times when projectors learn how to stop, it's because they're like in the hospital for exhaustion, or like something really terribly went wrong and they didn't realize it because they just kept trying to be a super generator for so long. So just knowing that center is not it's not defined for you, so you don't have consistent access to that energy, is really important. So projectors, though, just as a normal energy sense, they have a penetrating aura. So they have the ability to like taste your energy. And so they're the ones that kind of, they're like the birds out in the trees. And so they have a bird's eye view of like what's going to make life more efficient. How can they guide you in a way? They're fantastic guides in a lot of ways because they can see holes and ways of like, they can see inefficiency, they can see holes in like what people are doing. They have a natural way of understanding what could work better for somebody. They're great consultants. Like I said, consultants that can be on contract, so they're not 9 to 5 workers necessarily. A lot of projectors have come to me saying that they were told they were lazy, and that's just not the case. What a projector can do in 3 hours, I will spend all day doing. You know what I mean? So they are faster in what they do. And when they do allot time to do things, they're doing it quite a bit, but they need time for rest. They need time to recharge. They need time to not be constantly, chug-a-lugging through the day. So I guess that's the difference. And so with their strategy, waiting for an invitation is really important, and it has to do with their aura because they have that penetrating aura. And if they, give unsolicited advice, it creates like a feeling like somebody is being poked. you're kind of being poked and prodded in a way that you didn't ask to be. And so that creates a little bit of a visceral response with whoever they're next to. So you definitely want to wait for an invitation. And an invitation can be like a social cue. Like, say we're in a conversation and I'm a projector, and I say something about something, and somebody turns to me with their full attention and they're actually willing to learn more. That's an invitation of sorts. So physical invitations, of course, are in that category, but honestly, it's energetic cues. It's like ways like of, if I'm inviting you to dinner with me, like I'm inviting you for conversation. So there's like more vague ways of invitations as well. And we say wait for an invitation, especially for big life events like your career, your moves, for love, things like that. You don't have to wait for an invitation for like, getting your coffee or something like that. So it's really the big things. And especially in situations where you are going to give advice to somebody, you're going to want to wait for an invitation. And, that's particularly important because not only they're going to feel poked, but also, when people don't take your advice or they don't heed what you're saying, there's a feeling of bitterness that can come over a projector. So I didn't say this with generators and manifesting generators, but how you're out of alignment is, as a generator, you'll know you're frustrated. When you're feeling like a keen sense of frustration, you're out of alignment about something. And for manifesting generators, when you're feeling out of alignment, you're feeling anger and frustration. So you have the lovely combo. And then for projectors, if they're feeling out of alignment, there's a lot of bitterness. And especially when you give out, golden advice. Like, I've never met a projector that didn't just see me in a different way and be able to give me advice that I didn't even know I needed. And it's been amazing. But if I didn't ask for it and I didn't heed that, like I didn't, go after that advice, that feeling of like bitterness, like, hey, you didn't value what I said to you. And I know I'm right, So that's one way to kind of tell if you're out of alignment. And, projectors, their signature of being in alignment is success. That feeling of a success, literal success, but also a feeling behind of like, yes, okay, like the advice was taken and this person really benefited from it, or the advice was taken and that landed me a job in some sort of way. The advice was taken and now I'm in a beautiful contract with this person and we're in a great working relationship. Some form of success, some form of like alignment, some form of something coming together is what you feel when you're in alignment.
And it's funny, in astrology, I've never wanted to be another sign. When I was learning human design, I kind of want to be a projector because I'm like, they're so cool. But then I learned so cool. Like, they know so much. But then I learned that they have a lot of deconditioning to do.
So much deconditioning, and they can't see themselves. That's another thing, is they need someone to kind of come into their field to talk, like to see them a little bit. So, the projector is a coach. They also need a coach, so.
Ooh, I like that.
Because they really can't see their own energy very well. They can see other people, but they can't see themselves very well.
That makes sense. I have a best friend who's a projector, and then I have some clients that are projectors, and they're struggling because of the programming, but also because, trying to fit into the 9 to 5, trying to run by the sacral and all of that. And they're creating mental health problems because they feel shame and guilt and all the things that come with it. And now we know that they're projectors. It's like, okay, wait, you just got to chill.
Yes. Yeah. Like giving them the permission that, they're not supposed to be in a 9 to 5, which is a really hard thing to say to somebody, especially like pre-2020. Like, pre-2020, people are like, what else is there?
It's so true. Because I was actually thinking that, because what do you, when they're in these really successful jobs, they make a lot of money, and to be like, well, and they're not happy, right? To walk away from the financial security is so hard for people. And I'm like, it's the programming of all their open centers and all that things. But
yeah, I mean, like I said, I only have 2 defined centers, and it took me 10 years to quit my job. And I knew on the first day that I was there that I like literally had a stomach ache. I was like, I am not supposed to be here. And I stayed for 10 years. Thank you, being a fixed sign in astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, I just couldn't do it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
I think that projectors, they are so wise. And if you are a projector, like you really are here to lead us into the new paradigm, right? Isn't that they're kind of like the
Yes, yeah,
guides?
they are. They are the guides. Like where manifestors were always like the kings and queens and royal
Oh,
people in our society, and they've always been our traditional leaders. Now we're moving into a paradigm where the projectors are going to kind of take that rope, kind of take that like leadership, guidance, sort of role to bring us into this like new paradigm that's coming up for us. So yeah, it's
so
really, really
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah.
Such a big energy shift. I didn't know about the
Hmm.
kings and queens. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, like all of the like top leaders, like a lot of the royalty, especially if you look at like the British royalty, you look up their human design. Yeah, they a lot of them were manifestors. Hitler was a manifester. So yeah, obviously like manifestors nowadays have like a beautiful heightened amount of consciousness, but that's the power that you can wield as a manifester because you're here to I'll move into talking about manifestors now.
I was
I
gonna say
guess
that's
so.
a great segue.
Yeah, great segue. Let's talk about manifestors. Again, closed and repelling aura. You'll notice sometimes that if you're a manifestor, people will either love you or hate you depending on their receptivity to your energy. And there might be, I read somewhere, like it's funny because I look at pictures and the manifestor aura doesn't look that big, but then I've read somewhere that they have the biggest aura, meaning like they're head of household, especially if you're looking at families and you have a manifestor child. Technically, energetically, that manifestor child is head of household, which throws so many parents off. So
Oh my God, I can
so
imagine.
yeah, it's really, really, really interesting, because really they're not meant to be, even as children, told what to do. You can guide them as children, you can try to steer them in like the right direction or give them some options, but really you're not like they're not going to listen to you, first of all, and two, they're going to have such different energy. You're going to be like, I don't know what to do with my child. He's so different or she's so different. Like I don't understand. And it's because they're like not made to operate in the same way that everybody else is. Like no one's made to operate in the same way as everyone else, but truly manifestors have a different energy about them that is a little indescribable for people who don't know human design. And so they're supposed to follow their urges. Like that's what they're meant to do, follow those urges. Of course, they're going to inform and initiate. Those are learned skills, the informed part, especially, but just go for it. Like they are the manifestation of the Nike just do it like check mark thing. Like just do it. And we're all in business, at least we're taught to be manifestors, and we're not supposed to do that. Like most of us are generators and manifesting generators. We are to wait to respond to, like, again, our pings. But manifestors, they have an inner urge and they go for it. They just do it. I know a manifestor. I know a couple of them that are pretty amazing. I love meeting manifestors that are fully living into their energy because, like I said, they have a very big aura and they're meant to like be that big personality, that big person in this world. And the deconditioning that most manifestors need to go through is basically to be fully in their energy, to not squash themselves down, to make other people feel comfortable. I know a manifestor who's working on that. He's definitely working on that, but when he's in his own element, like he can, you know, make water into wine. Like it's kind of crazy. Like there's an instance where he just got this inner urge to like work on, their friends, like work on his backyard, and he created this like whole like backyard patio furniture set like within a week, and I like went to their house last month and I went the next month and I'm like, what, do you hire a team of people to like change your back? No, he had an urge to do it and he did it within 2 weeks, and then of course takes his rest. But yeah, it's kind of nuts, the urges that this person has. And then I know another woman who's she's just such a, like, she lives fully in her manifestor aura. It's like amazing to see. And she's a business coach and just has created a humongous community of people. It's like the manifestation of what you want a manifestor to do, where they've created their own city of people like that, understand this knowledge, that believe like certain, rules of like business, for instance, or ways of living, for instance. And she's just created this huge movement and community. And that's what manifestors are meant to do. They're supposed to like show us a different way and create like, and they're just natural leaders in a lot of ways as well. So that's the manifester.
Wow. That's amazing. I don't know if I know any manifestors, but I feel like my child is going to be one because I've
Yeah,
heard
right.
stories. They're like, your
I
child is here to
totally.
teach you. And I'm like, oh shit.
I thought like as I was talking about manifestor children, I like had this weird feeling about you and your child. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Thank you for confirming that, because I was like, that's weird. Like it was like a feeling in my gut. As a generator, I guess. I was like, I wonder if that'll happen for her too.
That's
But yeah,
so
they're
weird.
8% of the population, so they're not as common. But I keep meeting them. Like I keep meeting them in my circle and in my like purview, and I'm like, okay. And I personally love manifestor energy. Like I've never met one that has not inspired me in some way, or has like it just piques my curiosity how they like function, because I function so differently. So
Yeah. I'm almost wondering, I'm going to look up my friend's chart because you know how you said like some people love them, some people hate them. Like I love how much they are them, but a lot of people don't like them. And I'm like, I wonder if they're a manifester.
yeah,
That
for
would make a lot
sure.
of sense.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
oh, we need to do reflectors.
Reflectors. So as you said before, like you were hoping to be some other energy type when you first started learning human design. I was hoping to
Yeah.
be a reflector because I feel most like a reflector. And I'm very much a generator because I definitely have those like sacral movements. There's a part in your body graph where you can look at your personality side solely and your body side solely. And on my personality side, I'm a reflector. And on my body side, I'm a reflector. But once they come together, that's what makes me a generator. And your personality side is what you're conscious of. So I do wonder if we like, you have a lot colored in. So I wonder. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I looked that up. I think I was a projector.
you are a mental projector. That's what it's like. It's really interesting. Like, I think it's the one that, the one you feel like you are is usually like your personality one, like, because you're more conscious of that energy. So you have like mental projector energy, right? That you're conscious of. And then you put it all, wow, you have a lot going on in your body. Like you do your personality chart and it's just the head and the ajna, and everything else is open. But you go to the body, and I guess the body is, or the design one, you can click on design, and it's like all colored in. Like, well, you have three centers colored in. Let's see. You're still a manifesting generator in your design. But together, it makes a lot of beautiful defined centers, which is really
Okay,
cool.
the mental projector, I feel that because I'm like, how do I do the
Right?
things I do? And it is that.
It's exactly that. And I'm like, how can I be a mirror to other people, which is what reflectors are? And it's because I feel that so intently in my conscious energy, right? So reflectors are magical fairy beings. No, I'm just saying, I love reflectors. And I have not met, one has not come across me for a reading. And if you're a reflector out there and you're listening to this podcast, I will give you a reading for free. So just contact me if you're a reflector, because I am just so interested in this energy and I barely meet them. I think I met a woman who was telling me about her friend's twins and that they were reflectors, babies. So that was the only time, the only time I met, over a friend of a friend or a friend, their reflector children. But like, I have not met one really to do a reading with. I met one in my, like, I was doing a soul business, soul consciousness like program. And there was one reflector in there and she was amazing. Like she just could understand you very quickly. So the reflectors are, they are an energy type that basically has no energy centers defined. So all undefined centers, which is wild to me.
If you don't know what defined center, there's no color in those chakra systems. There's nothing colored in those centers, what we went over earlier.
Yes, exactly that. So nothing colored in. They're the most subject to conditioning, right? They are the mirrors of our, existence. So they were there to kind of show us be our little oracles almost. I think of oracles when I think of reflectors. They have a sampling and resistant aura, and they can like kind of like projectors. Like projectors can taste other auras, but there's something different about reflectors in the way that they can taste other auras as well. That they're here to like mirror us and uplift other people. And because they don't have any defined centers, their strategy is essentially to wait a lunar cycle. So 28 days.
That is so wild to me. When I read that, I was
It's
like, how do you do that?
How do you do that? I know the textbook definition of how you do that, right? But this is why I want more reflectors in my circle, so that we can do a like real life case study of like how it works for you and how they've seen it kind of work within their experiment. So again, any reflectors listening to this, please contact me. I would love to work with you, do a reading for you, and do some research and like how this works. Reflectors are only 1% of the population, so they're really, really rare. And also hearing that, I was like, yeah, I want to be a reflector.
I want to be rare.
I want to be rare. So
there is this person on TikTok I follow who is a psychic. She's younger. I believe I don't know what she would call herself, maybe an intuitive, but I don't know her name. She's extremely famous, and she's helped like billionaires with stock market and like predictions and stuff. And she just came out and she says some of the most triggering but realist things, right? Like her things are just, she just came out, she's a reflector. And I'm like, oh, and she goes, I'm just saying what you need to hear. People are triggered by me, but like I'm literally reflecting back where we're going, what we need. And every time I see a video of her, I'm like, damn, that is so insightful, but she says it just so flat. It's just so real. And I'm like, that makes sense. You're a reflector. I just learned that.
Yes, yeah. That's so interesting. And the woman that was in my program, that like soul consciousness business program that I went in, she was very similar, actually. Like what she did is she ended up creating these like sessions where you could just talk to her and she could like almost understand you. Like just she would sit there and be silent, absorb your information, and then reflect back what it is that you were saying, which again, therapists can do, other people can do, but the way that she did it, again, she had a very calm demeanor, and it would be like she would say some like the truth would fly out of her mouth, and it would be like, oh, I was not ready to hear that. So, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. So yeah, that I would say absolutely, it's an absolute gift of reflectors to be able to reflect back what the other person needs to hear in an uplifting, like it doesn't have to be in an uplifting way, but eventually it will uplift other people and help them get out of whatever stagnant energy. So they're waiting a lunar cycle, and then their whole authority, it's about surprise, which is so hard to maintain in our society. So it's just really interesting to hear. Sandra Bullock is a reflector, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think that it actually works really
her.
nicely, really well for acting, for a really creative career, for a career that like, again, will give you those ebbs and flows and the ability to be surprised and the ability to play new characters and change it up a little bit. Because as a reflector, you have the ability to morph and meld and like change yourself according to whatever energy you're in. I have all these undefined centers, and it's so easy for me to like be a little bit of a chameleon sometimes in other people's presence because I can feel into what they want me to hear. And I mean, that's like a whole people pleasing like thing that I had to let go of, right? But it was so easy for me to do because I could feel it, I could sense it, I could, I just knew what the other person wanted me to say or what they wanted me to be, and so I would turn into that. And as a reflector, you can very much do that with all of those undefined centers, and acting, I think, is like a great expression of that. So cool, good on Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, and I love her. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I want to meet a reflector in real life, but that is so awesome.
It's so awesome. I'm just so fascinated by the energy type just in general. It reminds me of like pure Pisces energy. Like if you just had Pisces in your chart, if you just had 12th house planets, like you would just be this like, or if you had Neptune aspecting everything, you would just be this like very sensitive, like sieve of like a person that could like really meld energies with other people. So yeah, it's really
Wow.
interesting.
That is.
Yeah.
It's cool to know also this breakdowns of like 70% are manifesting generators and generators, 1% are reflectors, 11 are manifestors. Like that's so interesting. So one thing about human design that I want to talk about, especially if you're listening to this and you're really interested in it, you're going to come across how human design was created because it was channeled in the 80s, right? Pretty new.
Yeah, it's fairly new. And it was channeled. So again, this is all, this all is going to challenge your belief system, right? I'm personally someone who believes in so many truths, and so it didn't bother me so much. But there were even instances where I was like, "Ugh, I don't know about this." But experiment for yourself. Like, I'll talk about how it was created, and then you can look at the system, you can experiment yourself, you can figure out if it's something that like makes sense or is in alignment for you. There's nobody like forcing you to subscribe to the system, but it was created in a kind of like wonky way, especially if you're not privy to the ability to channel or not privy to all the crazy things that can happen to a person as far as like gaining information and hearing spirit and hearing like intelligence out there as well. So the founder is Ra Uru Hu, and he's a complicated man. He's no longer living. But when he was, what was his real name? Not real name, his first name, Robert Krakauer, or something like that. He used to live in Canada. And one day, and I don't know the complete background about this, but like one day I believe he left his family or he left his wife of some sort.
Yeah.
And he went off and he went to Ibiza, Spain. And, not every site's going to say this, but I believe he was also on psychedelics, drugs, different things on Ibiza. And there was a moment of channeling that he came across as he was like on these various things. And it lasted for 8 days. So he was able to channel the human design system for, 8 days of hearing a particular voice. What I'm thinking it was some sort of intelligence out there that was able to kind of channel through him, hearing that intelligence and recording this very scientific system that again melds a lot of the tools that we already had on this existence. And I do feel like it was channeled when it was channeled because we were ready to kind of hear this information. So he's a very interesting person. Hu was he was a manifester, so naturally he created something no one he channeled something no one had ever channeled before, and he created a movement that we're now all kind of subscribed to and we're all like listening into and learning more about. So he really lived into his manifestor energy. So yeah, he channeled that. I think it was 1987. And then it really changed his life. And I think he created something beforehand that was called something else that was based on the system that he channeled, and it refined itself into human design in 1992.
And, the debate out there is he was a very rich, privileged white man who left his family and channeled. And so there is privilege in it that he could go to Ibiza and take
Absolutely.
whatever and channel.
Absolutely.
But, like you're saying, it's an experiment. And
it's an experiment. Take what you will with it. And, some of these are truths, right? He could do that. He could go to Ibiza. Was he an absolute like jerk for leaving his family and like doing all of that stuff? I mean, leave those opinions, at bay. I think we all are in agreement that that's a pretty like not great thing to do. But he's a manifestor. He was following an urge, and he didn't even realize he was following an urge. And so there's so much in his chart that explains like his relationships and like his ability to connect with people in certain ways. You can see it all in his chart, like why he was the way he was. And there are octaves to energy. Like, so there could have been like a higher expression of, or a more expanded way for him to do that. But he just had to do it. Like there's almost like an energy outburst that needed to happen for him. And thankfully it did happen because we get to benefit from this information. I would say almost every leader out there in the world, you're going to find really crappy things about them. So like you're going to find really terrible things about them, and that'll make you question whether or not you should follow the information or whether or not you should continue to like celebrate them or whatever. Make your decisions, but take heed to some of the information that's like come out or some of the lessons that have come out. Like Martin Luther King was a complete womanizer and like pretty awful when it came to women, but we're still in like a desegregated situation, right? So there's a lot of just take it with a grain of salt. My point is, if you learn this and you're skeptical, just try human design for yourself. Personally, spending so many years in deep study with the system, I can say that information is really impeccable. And what he's built here, I'm just really thankful that it happened and that he was able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful system. It's changed my life. Just really allowing it changed my life because I started to live by it recently. And when you start to live by it, you see it start to turn on your body almost ways that you've never really allowed before. And again, it's a journey. Like I didn't know 7 years to deprogram makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it's such a journey, such a journey. Yeah. Yeah. And like for me, I feel like it will take like probably even more because I have periods of time where I'm like, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I have the energy. I'll just go ahead and do it. Like, oh, this person wants me to do it. I'll just go ahead and do it. And that's like not necessarily in my design. Don't necessarily feel like a sacral like impulse to do it. And that's going to take time to change for me. And I'm okay with that. But also just like, I know what to come back to. If I'm really feeling like outside of myself, I know what to come back to. I know like strategy and authority, forget everything else, strategy and authority. Does this like, bring me joy?
So astrology is in human design, and really how I'm going to start practicing human design is marrying astrology with it. Do you want to break down how you use astrology with human design?
I would say that, right now I use it in like I have one offering where you can get a human design and astrology reading. And then I have another offering where you work with me for 7 to 8 weeks and we go through all of the energetic knowledge that I have and we work on energy alignment and what that means. And in those sessions, I'm talking about both charts back and forth. And like, human design is great in a sense that you can see again what your body is doing in a lot of ways. And I use astrology a little bit differently. Like there's medical astrology and it's very much about the body, but I don't dive so deep into medical astrology when I'm doing my readings. I'm talking about your psychology and the personality, and we're talking about different things, concrete events that have happened in your life. So for me, basically having astrology in my tool belt, having human design in my tool belt, I've used it very differently. We went through, as like people know, we went through a mystic astrology apprenticeship together, and I went through many other programs after that. And I find that I approach astrology, even though it is a very like heady space, in a really intuitive way. And sometimes I get very heady with human design, even though both systems have both energies in them. So human design, in one sense, I can get very like heady and scientific, and there's like more of a masculine action oriented yang energy to it, because not only are you talking about the information, but you're going out and you're experimenting with it and you're embodying it once you get out there. So I find that like it takes me more into like my yang energy, my masculine energy. And astrology, even though again I can get very masculine and heady with it, it takes me to an intuitive place, a place of feeling, a place of receptivity. So I guess that's like the difference between the two. And as far as marrying the two, I haven't really married them in like the same way that I think you're about to, but it's interesting, except in the fact that, you can see on the body graph, I guess we'll pull up the body graph. So you can see on the body graph the different planets. I think it's really cool that you can see Earth on here. So you'll see at the top, there's a little symbol for the sun, and then right underneath it's Earth. And then after that, you see the North Node and the South Node and the Moon and Mercury and Venus, and it just keeps going down. So sometimes I marry in those concepts and what they mean in human design, because I think it tells you a little bit more, especially if you're looking at human design for business in particular. I like to look at the unconscious Mars. I like to look at Jupiter for business purposes, specifically Mercury, especially because Mercury rolls over a lot of commercial activity and also the way you communicate and connect. So yeah, I will pull in those concepts, but that's still in human design. But as far as like merging the two charts, I haven't really done that for the most part.
Okay. Yeah. What I
Yeah.
found, I've just been experimenting. And I found that really using the planet, the lesson of the gate and channel with the planet and looking at the chart of where that is in their life. And it just gives more depth, I feel like. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
what I've been doing on Genetic Matrix is I've been pulling up their natal design, just their unconscious chart, and gives
Ooh.
so much energy because I have all this Scorpio. All I have in my natal chart is a North Node Scorpio. I have Sun, Jupiter, Pluto, rising conjunct. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
It gives more energy into, especially in a therapeutic perspective of the unconscious and what you're struggling with, and maybe where traumas occurred and things like that, pulling up the unconscious design.
Whoa. I love that so much. You've just taught me a new thing. This is awesome.
I love the unconscious chart. I am like, there's only two places in the world right now that will pull an unconscious design birth chart, and it's magical. I was also born on a full moon, or that unconscious chart, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense of why full moons are so powerful.
Oh gosh, yeah. Completely. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Oh my gosh, I'm so gonna play with that a little bit more when we get off.
Yeah, it's really fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like human design is, this is what it is, masculine, like black and white. This is your design. This what works for you. Astrology is like, we have a spectrum and there's a high vibe and a low
Yeah.
vibe, and we can really work through that. And marrying the two really gives you a holistic viewpoint of yourself through astrology, your personality, your unconscious. You can explore that energy. And then human design's like, now what do you do with that energy? I feel like that's really helped kind of being like, cool, that's my astrology, but then what? And that's human design. It's like, then do this.
Yeah, 1,000%. I love that description. It very much like marries the two, you know? You have this beautiful read of your energy and like the receptivity and just like the natural being that you are. And then human design's like, okay, let's experiment. Let's embody this. Like, how can we get into alignment? I love
Mm.
that. Yeah.
I feel like my whole life, and this is the thing we were talking to earlier, is around you can still live your design out even if you don't realize, right? Like before you deprogram. And my whole life, like at 12, I knew I was going to be a therapist because of my family therapist. I had to go because of my brother. And then when I went into personal therapy in grad school, when I was studying to be a therapist, I had a therapist who did astrology. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do astrology. This is great. And then I had another therapist who did human design. And I feel like this was the last toolbox or tool that I'm putting in my toolbox to like create exactly what I'm like envisioning. And it's wild. And I
Yeah.
just followed the pings. I just followed the sacral chakra.
Oh my God. I love it so much. That's awesome.
Okay, so human design obviously is very, very complex. You literally scratched the very surface. And if you got lost during it, there's so many resources that you can get apps for it now, get a little Snapchat of yourself. But there are some other things that human designs share. Give a really big sneak peek, and then you'll come back again and we'll kind of dive into deeper human design stuff. But what other fun things that human design can share for someone?
I personally really love human design and like why it really helped me in like my health stuff too that was going on. Is there's something called the primary health system in human design, and it has to do with those little arrows at the top of your body graph that have a left facing versus a right facing arrow, and that is all about like the again primary health system. It'll tell you about like best ways to eat, the best way you digest information, the best way to manifest, the best way you think, different things like that. And I'm fascinated by it. And I think it's so fun to look at. Even through that, you can see kind of what sense or what's your superpower, I like to call it, but like what's your highest sense in human design. And for me, it actually ended up being outer vision. So I was really bummed when I saw that because I was like, what do you mean outer vision? Like we're all programmed to, if you don't like the way something looks to like pretend you do or whatever it is. And just to not like, it's rude to say you don't like the design of something, or it's rude to say you don't like the way that something looks. And I have outer vision, and that's like my most heightened sense. And it's also like what gives me the most information. It's like my little superpower. And so I found that was incredibly interesting. I really love it now. I actually trust my outer vision abilities as well. And I think I told you this before, but like I was buying a candle like on Etsy, and I really hated the design of the candle that I was about to purchase, but I was like, oh, this person's local to me, like it'll get here quicker. I read all the things because I don't buy any like fragrance oils or like anything that's not an essential oil, basically no synthetic fragrance. And I bought it and it got to me and I hated it. I hated the candle so much. Like the smell was overwhelming. And I kept asking her, I was like, are you sure these are essential oils? They don't smell like they're real, like, and if they were pretty low quality essential oils. And I really regretted buying the candle. Whole point is I could have evaded all of that if I just followed my gut feeling about hating like the label of the candle itself. So I followed my gut to like get another candle, loved the label. It was the perfect candle for me. So, and things just happen that way. Like if I don't like the way something looks, then I don't go further. I don't pursue it. Right. So, and it sounds bad on one level, right? Because again, I don't do it for everything because I do think that there's certain sensitivity, right? But aesthetics do matter as far as where I decide in what direction I go in as far as my business, as far as what I do in my day to day. Unfortunately, outer vision's my super sense. So
Also very Taurus. Like you like,
yeah.
the visual aspect of earth, the pleasure, and I don't know, that just seems very Taurus of you too.
It's very Taurus. And like the other person I read for someone who is like very Libra and she also had outer vision. And I was like, you know what? It's just the Venusian like
Yeah,
parts of us
exactly.
that like just need to have that, I guess. So
And we'll definitely dive into it deeper. One little like teaser is some of us are specific manifestors and some of us are non-specific manifestors. So I found that was fascinating when I figured out like I'm not specific. I'm not supposed to write a whole list of what I want. And once I started doing that, things are like this house totally what I like felt, but I had no idea.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm very specific and I've always been that way. I'm like, what do you mean talk about the feeling behind it? I'm like, no, I need to be specific. Like I know that I want this color, this size, this everything. And it happens to be my little agreement with the universe. And you can see that in your chart, which is so fun.
So we'll definitely have you back to talk about more human design because I know people are going to listen to this and have a ton of questions. So comment below any questions you have and we will answer them. And next time Regina comes, and we're also, and I'm so excited for this episode, we're going to do an episode on fertility. Such a great topic.
I love it. I love fertility, conscious conception, all of the wonderful topics around that. That's like, why I'm here. I feel like like part of why I'm here is like just to talk about birth and fertility and all of that fun stuff. So I love to get back on and just chat your ear off about it.
Oh, I learned so much in this. Like I just started a course in human design and you just taught me so much more and I love it. And you just communicate so well. And especially with the fertility, I feel like this is knowledge that you're going to give us that you can't find other places, right? And
yes, yeah.
it's just not out there. And everything I've gone through, everything my friends have gone through, I'm just so excited to have you because you're so caring and empathetic and handle it with such care, but have so much wisdom when you share. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
of course. Well, thank you so much. Drop a comment below for Regina if you have any questions. So let everyone know a little bit about what you offer, where to find you, and what your socials are.
Awesome. So I am the Celestial Womb at the Celestial Womb on Instagram and TikTok. And I have a number of offerings. So on the energetic side of things, I have astrology offerings where I do a foundational reading. And then I have a separate reading for more advanced clients that want to do a timing and prediction reading. And I'm expanding so many ways beyond that. Right now, I'm offering free or donation optional readings for horary astrology. So horary astrology is an old practice of astrological divination. And so if you have a question, so the great thing about horary is you don't need your birth time, right? Because you're asking a question. And right now I'm doing questions specific to love and partnership because I'm still learning the science and I got those questions down pretty well as far as how to read the chart. So you don't need your birth time. All you need is to have a question having to do with love or partnership in some way. If you're working with a business partner, that's fine too, because it's all like seventh house querent relationship stuff. So yeah, I'm doing that for free or donation optional. And that's available on my booking link, and which is in my bio and Instagram. So feel free to sign up for those. That's like just a new area I'm getting into. And in the summer, I'll be offering astrocartography readings for anyone who's interested in relocation astrology, I find it so, so fascinating. It's fantastic, and a great thing to get into, especially if you're planning a trip or you want to make a major move somewhere. It's fantastic. And then, of course, I have my human design readings. I have human design readings that are foundational body graph readings. I have human design readings for families and astrology reading for families as well. And then I have my birth offerings. I have, birth work that you can work with me on as you're planning an autonomous birth of some sort. So I work with anyone planning a physiological birth, anyone planning to be, in their own power when they are trying to birth. I have offerings on that, and I marry in human design and astrology in those offerings. And I have a postpartum offering, but I'm stopping it after April.
Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wealth of knowledge. I cannot wait to have you back on the podcast and just continue to learn from you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I love nerding out with the fellow metaphysics nerd. So thank you so much.
To get in touch with me, you can head over to thelunarchild.com and book any astrology or therapy sessions. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram, The Lunar Child, if you want to dive into daily astrology transits, everything you need to know about your birth chart, and some health and wellness goodies. And I will see you all next time.